The contract was 2 pages long, and the only part that mattered was the last paragraph on page 2. 90 days. No extensions, no explanations required. I read it 3 times standing in the parking garage of a building I had no business being inside. My truck was on level 2, the one with the busted passenger mirror I kept meaning to fix. I had a job the next morning at 6. A kitchen renovation in Naperville, tile work, the kind of job that leaves your knees aching by noon. And somehow I was standing there holding a document that a woman I'd met 4 days ago wanted me to sign. I signed it. I'm still not sure I can fully explain why, but I'm going to try. My name is Darren Koby. I'm 41 years old. I do flooring and tile work for a small contracting outfit outside of Chicago. And I have a daughter named Maggie who is 7 and who believes, with complete sincerity, that the moon follows our truck home every night because it likes us. I've been raising Maggie alone since she was 3. Her mother left, not dramatically, not after a big fight, just quietly, the way a tide goes out. One morning there was a note on the kitchen table and a half-drunk cup of coffee gone cold, and that was the end of that chapter. I don't talk about it much. Maggie doesn't ask much. We've built something that works, the 2 of us, and it fits us the way a worn-in work boot fits. Not pretty, but solid. We lived in a 2-bedroom rental in Elmhurst. I drove a 14 F-150 with 190,000 miles on it. I packed Maggie's lunch every morning, usually a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and one of those little notes she'd stopped reading but that I kept writing anyway, because some habits you keep not for the other person but for yourself. That's who I was when I met Vivienne Ashford. Vivienne Ashford was the kind of name you saw on the side of buildings. Literally. Ashford Capital had a tower on Michigan Avenue with its name cut into the stone above the entrance in letters about 2 feet tall. Her father had built the company. Her grandfather had built the reputation. And Vivienne, at 38, had spent the last decade running it. Quietly, efficiently, and apparently without a single person in her life who knew her as anything other than Ms. Ashford. I didn't know any of that when I first met her. I met her because I was on the wrong floor. I do work for a property management company that handles several high-rises downtown. That Tuesday, I was supposed to be on the 14th floor of a building, on Wacker, replacing the grout in a bathroom that had been leaking through the ceiling of the unit below. I got off the elevator on the 15th by mistake, walked down the hall reading the job order on my phone, and knocked on the wrong door. The woman who opened it looked at me the way people look at something unexpected, not unfriendly, just surprised. She was in a dark blazer, no makeup, hair pulled back. She had a phone to her ear and a coffee mug in her other hand, and the expression of someone who had 17 things to do before 8 a.m. "I'm on 15, I said. "I need 14. She looked at the number on her door, then back at me. "You need the elevator," she said. "Yeah, sorry." I turned to go, and then she said, almost to herself more than to me, "You do tile work?" I turned back. Among other things, she looked at me for a moment, the kind of look that's actually an assessment. Then she said, "I'll call you," and closed the door. I went back to the elevator. I figured she was joking, or maybe she'd just said it the way people say we should catch up, meaning nothing, going nowhere. She called 4 days later. We met at a coffee shop on Michigan Avenue, the kind of place where a cappuccino costs $9 and the chairs are somehow both expensive and uncomfortable. She was already there when I arrived, at a corner table, with a leather folder in front of her. She didn't open with small talk. "I have a situation," she said, "that requires a specific kind of arrangement. I want to be clear about what it is before we go any further, because I don't want there to be any confusion." I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup and waited. My father passed away 14 months ago. He left controlling interest in the company to me, which I expected. What I didn't expect was a clause in his estate structure that ties the transfer of a secondary asset, a property portfolio in Michigan and Wisconsin, to my marital status. It's an old clause written when my father was a different kind of man, and my lawyers are working to contest it. But that process takes time, and the portfolio goes to a trust in 90 days if the condition isn't met. I looked at her. "And the condition is that I'm married." She said it flatly, the way you'd read a line from a legal document, which is essentially what it was, for 90 days, after which the clause is satisfied, the portfolio transfers, and the arrangement concludes. I sat with that for a moment. Outside, a city bus went by with an advertisement on its side. Some phone company. A family laughing at something on a screen. Why me? I said. She folded her hands on the table. Because I don't have time to manage a person who wants something from this. Business people see angles. Men in my social circle see access. I need someone who will simply be present, behave appropriately in a limited number of social contexts, and not complicate things. You were confused about which floor you were on. You apologized and turned around. That was either very simple or very uncalculated, and either way it was what I needed to see. I almost laughed. That's your criteria. One of them. What are the others? You have a daughter. I set down my coffee. Men with children, she said, tend to understand that some things matter more than pride. They also tend to be less likely to make scenes. She said it without cruelty, as a fact. The arrangement would need to be discreet. There would be a handful of events. A charity dinner, a board meeting appearance, possibly a weekend at a property in Door County. The rest of the time you'd carry on your life as normal, and my daughter would not be part of the arrangement. This is between us. I looked at the leather folder. What's in there? She slid it across the table. 2 pages. Last paragraph on page 2. 90 days. No extensions. No explanations required. She also named a number, a compensation figure for my time. I'm not going to say what it was, but I'll say this. It was enough that I sat there for a moment calculating how many kitchen renovations in Naperville it would take me to get there on my own, and the answer was a number of years I did not want to think about. I didn't take the money for me. I want to say that and have it be true, and I think it mostly is. I took it for Maggie's college fund, which at that point contained less than $3,000. I took it for the truck, which needed a new transmission I'd been putting off for 8 months. I took it because sometimes you're standing at a door you didn't know existed, and all you can do is decide whether to walk through it. I signed the contract in the parking garage that night. The first week was fine in the way that strangers managing a business arrangement can be fine, polite, functional. Nobody pretending it was something it wasn't. Vivienne had a penthouse in the Gold Coast. I kept my apartment in Elmhurst. That was not in the contract, but it was understood. I showed up when I was needed. I wore the sport coat she had couriered to my apartment without comment. I stood next to her at a board dinner on the 42nd floor of the Ashford Tower and shook hands and said my name and did not embarrass either of us. On the way home that night, in the back of the car she'd arranged, I pulled off the tie and held it in my lap and thought about Maggie, who was with my neighbor Gloria, who sometimes watched her when I had evening jobs. I texted Gloria, all good. Be home by 11. Then I sat with my reflection in the window and didn't think about much else. The second event was worse. A charity gala, the kind of evening where everything costs $600 and nobody talks about it. Vivienne moved through the room with a precision that I found myself studying the way I study a well-laid floor. Every step intentional, every conversation timed. She laughed exactly as much as was required and never more. I stayed close but not too close. I refilled her water glass once without being asked. She noticed, I think, though she didn't say anything. What she did say on the way out was, "You didn't speak much. You didn't need me to," I said. She looked at me for a moment. Then she got in the car. It was around week 3 that things started to shift, though I couldn't have named it then. I had Maggie for the weekend. I always had Maggie on weekends, and on Saturday afternoon I took her to the nature center in Glen Ellen, the one with the trail along the creek where she likes to look for crawdads. Maggie has this way of walking through the world with total, undefended attention, like every rock could be interesting, like the day is just a long series of things worth noticing. I've tried to learn from her. I think I'm getting better at it. We were coming back to the truck when my phone rang. "Vivienne, I need you tomorrow," she said. "Brunch, one of my father's former partners. His wife asked specifically if you'd be there. I have my daughter tomorrow." There was a pause. In the contract, there was nothing about weekends specifically, but the spirit of the thing was clear. I'd be available for scheduled events with reasonable notice. "I see," she said. "Can you arrange?" "No," I said. "Sundays are mine and Maggie's. That's not something I arrange around." Another pause, longer. "The brunch is at 11, she said. "Then I'll miss the brunch," I said. "I'm sorry. I'll make up whatever I can, another time." She hung up. I stood by the truck while Maggie a piece of quartz she'd found on the trail, white and sparkly, and I held it and told her it was beautiful and I meant it. Vivienne didn't call again that evening. She didn't cancel the contract either. The Door County trip was in week 5. It was a weekend at her father's old property up north. A house on the lake, not enormous, but the kind of place that's been in a family long enough to stop looking like money and start looking like memory. There were photographs on the walls in mismatched frames. A wind chime on the porch made of the kind of shells you find on a Lake Michigan beach, not bought. A bookshelf with paperbacks and a few hardcovers and the kind of water stains on the shelves that come from decades of wet glasses set down without thinking. There was one other couple, friends of Vivienne's father, a retired judge and his wife who'd known Vivienne since she was a little girl. They were the kind of people who ask questions because they're actually curious, not to fill silence, and they asked about my work with a genuineness that surprised me. "I love tile work," the judge's wife said. Her name was Bernice, and she said this with complete conviction. "There's something so satisfying about it, all those pieces fitting together." "Yes, ma'am," I said. "I feel the same way." Vivienne, across the table, looked up from her wine glass. That night after dinner, Bernice and her husband went to bed early, and Vivienne and I sat on the porch because there was nowhere else to go, and no reason to pretend we were tired. The lake was dark. There was enough wind to move the trees. She said, out of nowhere, "My father left those shells." I looked at the wind chime. "He collected them," she said, "every summer. He had a coffee can in the garage full of them. One winter he strung them and hung them and never said anything about it. I didn't notice for 3 years. I didn't say anything. He was not a warm man," she said. "He showed up. He was present. He provided. He expected the same from others." She turned her wine glass slowly. "I used to think that was enough, that showing up was the whole thing." "It's a lot of the thing," I said. "It's not the whole thing." We sat there for a while. The wind chime moved. I thought about my mother, who used to cut my sandwiches diagonally because she knew I liked them that way, even when I was too old to care, even when I never said anything about it. That's not the whole thing either. But it's a piece. The shift happened the way most real things happen, not in a single moment, but accumulated. The way grout fills a joint, one small section at a time until the whole surface holds together. There was a Tuesday evening around week 7 when she called, and I could hear it in her voice before she said a word, that particular flattening of tone that means a person is keeping something tamped down. "The lawyers got a ruling," she said. "The challenge to the clause was denied. I waited. It means the 90 days stands. What we're doing is the only path." "Okay," I said. "I wanted to tell you," she said. "In case it changed anything for you." "Does it change anything for you?" I said. She was quiet for a moment. "No." "Then it doesn't change anything for me." She said goodnight and hung up. I was in my kitchen, standing over a pot of pasta I was making for dinner, and I stood there for a moment after the call ended and felt something I hadn't expected to feel, which was something close to concern. Not for the portfolio, for her. I thought about calling back. I didn't. I plated the pasta and called Maggie for dinner, and she came in wearing her soccer shin guards for reasons I did not ask about. And we ate, and she told me about a caterpillar she'd found at recess, and I listened the way I always try to listen, with my full attention, because she won't be 7 forever and I'm aware of that every single day. A week before the 90 days ended, I was in the building on Wacker, the right floor this time, a bathroom renovation on 14, and when I came out to load the truck I found a parking ticket on my windshield. $45. I sat in the cab and held the ticket and just felt tired in the specific way that only money trouble makes you feel, where even a small number adds to a pile you're already watching. My phone buzzed. A text from Vivienne. "Are you available tomorrow evening?" I wrote back, "Yes." She picked me up herself. No driver, which was unusual. We drove north on Lake Shore toward nothing in particular, and she said, "I want to ask you something." "Okay. Why didn't you ask for more when you signed?" "The number I offered, you didn't negotiate. Most people negotiate." I thought about it. "I didn't come in with a number," I said. "Your number was fair. It wasn't that fair." "It was fair to me," I said. "My bar might be different than yours." She drove without saying anything for a block or two. The lake was on our left, dark and enormous. "I've been trying to figure you out," she said. "There's not that much to figure out." "People always say that," she said. "It's never true." "Okay," I said. "Then try asking a question." She thought about it. Actually thought, not just prepared. Then she said, "What's the hardest part?" of doing it alone with her. I didn't have to think. Knowing something's wrong and not being able to fix it fast enough. She had a week in second grade where something was happening with a kid at school, some social thing, and she'd come home quiet. Just quiet. And I'm a dad. I want to solve things. I want to find the kid and have a talk, and make it stop. But you can't. You just have to sit with her and let her know she can talk when she's ready and trust that showing up is enough. I paused. Usually it is. Sometimes you lie awake hoping it is. Vivienne kept her eyes on the road. After a moment she said very quietly, I didn't have that. Someone sitting with me. I looked at her. I had everything else, she said. Every class, every camp, every resource. I didn't have someone who would just sit. I didn't try to respond to that. Some things don't need a response, they just need to be heard. Day 87. I was replacing the backsplash in a kitchen in Wheaton when my phone rang. Not Vivienne's number. A number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. A man's voice, clipped and professional, said he was calling from Ashford Capital on behalf of a member of the board. He said there were questions being raised about the nature of the arrangement. He said they'd like to speak with me directly. He said it in the way people say things when they're hoping you'll be intimidated enough to say something stupid. I didn't call back. I called Vivienne instead. I got a call, I said, from someone on your board. A pause. I know, she said. I'm handling it. I'm not going to speak with them. I'm not asking you to. I just wanted you to know, I said, that it doesn't change anything. I signed something and I keep what I sign. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I know you do. I hung up and went back to the backsplash. White subway tile, simple pattern, nothing complicated. By the end of the afternoon it looked clean and solid and like it had always been there. On day 89 she called me at 9 in the evening. I was sitting on the porch of my apartment, technically a small concrete slab. Not really a porch, but Maggie and I called it the porch and it functioned as one. Maggie was asleep inside. I was drinking a beer and looking at the parking lot and the tree at the edge of it, a big oak that was putting out leaves for maybe the 40th or 50th spring of its life. Tomorrow is day 90, she said. I know. The clause will be satisfied at midnight. I know. She said nothing for a moment. I heard traffic somewhere on her end. She was in the city. I don't want to do this over the phone, she said. You don't have to do anything, I said. We made a deal. The deal was 90 days. Tomorrow it's done. That's not. She stopped. Started again. That's not what I was going to say. I waited. I've been trying to find the right way to say something, she said, and I've realized that I don't have one. I don't have the right way because I haven't done this before. I don't mean this. I mean any of it. The version where I say what I actually mean to a person I actually. She stopped again. I set down my beer very carefully on the concrete. You don't have to say it right, I said. I'm aware of that. That's the problem. Every other version of this, in every other room, I need to say things right. I need to be precise and clear and not. Her voice did something small that I noticed, not something people can use against me. I'm not going to use anything against you, I said. I know, she said. That's the part I can't explain, even to myself. You show up. You don't take more than what's agreed. You don't make me feel like a transaction. And I've been a transaction my entire adult life, Darren. I've been an asset, and a liability, and a strategic relationship, and I've been fine with that because it was all I knew to be. A pause. I don't want to go back to that. The oak tree moved a little in the wind. I looked at it. I'm not going anywhere, I said. The contract ends tomorrow. The contract? Yeah, I said. I'm talking about me. She didn't say anything for a long moment, then, I'd like to come there. If that's something you'd be okay with. It's a parking lot and a concrete slab and a tree, I said. That's fine. I mean it, she snorted. I want to come anyway. She came. She sat on the concrete slab in a coat that probably cost more than my truck, and I got her a beer she didn't ask for and she held it without drinking it. And we sat there in the quiet of a Tuesday night in Elmhurst, Illinois, watching the old oak tree hold its leaves against the dark. And we talked. Not about the company, not about the clause, not about anything that had a dollar figure attached to it. Around midnight, Maggie's light came on. I looked up at the window. She's a night owl, I said. Vivienne looked up at the window, too. The light went off, went on again, off. She's checking, Vivienne said quietly. Checking what? That you're still there. I looked at her. Kids do that, she said. They wake up and check. to make sure the thing they count on is still in place. She turned the bottle in her hands. It's a good thing to be, something someone counts on. I thought about the wind chime and the shells in the coffee can and the note my mother left on my sandwiches. I thought about all the small things that accumulate into a life, the ones nobody notices until suddenly they're gone and the whole surface shifts. Yeah, I said. It is. The contract ended at midnight. Nothing else did.